All right, we want to bring you the latest in terms of a potential peace deal, which I got to tell you guys, I am not very hopeful about at this point. I'm going to talk more about this in my monologue. But let's go ahead and put this first piece up on the screen, which seemed a little bit hopeful. So we had some reporting, this from Financial Times, from Turkey. They are saying that Russia and Ukraine have, quote, almost reached agreement on a neutral Ukraine with no plans for NATO, demilitarizing Ukraine, and security guarantees, denazification, whatever that is, lifting restrictions on the use of Russian in Ukraine. This was a sticking point. This was a sort of source of tension between the Russian-speaking population in Ukraine and the Ukrainian-speaking population, and with Russia themselves. There were laws that were passed, basically, making it, getting rid of Russia as one of the official languages. So that's one of the pieces here that's a kind of sticking point. But let's go ahead and put this next piece up on the screen about denazification. There's some more details here about what that might mean. Likely a compromise would involve Kyiv making some token concessions, banning certain groups, changing the names of streets named after what they describe as Ukrainian partisans who fought alongside Nazi Germany. It's a very diplomatic way of putting it, against the USSR in the Second World War. Russia's also likely to soften a demand for Ukraine to make Russian the second official language in the country if Kyiv rolls back laws limiting its use, one of the people added. So this is once again putting out there, oh, we're getting close to a deal, that here are the outlines of it, this could really be coming together. But I think there are very good reasons to be skeptical of this. First of all, there was reporting from the U.S. that behind closed doors, Zelensky, when he was meeting with the leaders who sort of foolishly and very, in a very risky maneuver, actually went to Kyiv to speak with him directly. Some of the diplomats familiar with those exchanges basically said, like, they want to fight. They don't think that they need to back down. They're not trying hard to reach a peace deal. And then this morning you have additional reporting that Dmitry Peskov, who's Putin's spokesman, says on the possibility of peace that the degree of progress falls short of what we would like and how the dynamic of developments demands on the Ukrainian side, meaning Russia's ongoing assault on its cities. Peskov said direct talks between Putin and Zelensky will only happen if Kyiv, quote, does its homework by holding negotiations and agreeing their results. For now, there is no substantial movement. They won't have any agreements to commit to. So what's going on here? You have two sides that think they're winning. Yeah. You have the Russians who, they just debuted this extraordinary capabilities. They know they've got a vastly superior military. Yeah, they may be engaged in these talks as a sort of as like a PR deal, demonstrating to the world, of course we're serious about peace, demonstrating to their own population, of course we care about peace, but perhaps not really negotiating in good faith because they think they can ultimately accomplish their military objectives and they don't think that they have to accept any sort of concessions. You have the Ukrainians, and I just looked up the polling, 90% of the Ukrainians think they're going to outright win this war. Exactly. 90%. Right. And so even if Zelensky in his heart of hearts knows the reality, this is the political landscape that, by the way, he's helped co-create. So he can't go in and accept in a deal what would be extremely painful concessions. I mean, any actual peace deal would almost certainly end up with ceding some Ukrainian territory to the Russians. Like, that's what the Russians are willing to accept. And I don't think the Ukrainians are anywhere close to being willing to accept that, because they believe not only that they are going to win ultimately. It was the almost a majority of Ukrainians who believed in this polling from a Ukrainian pollster that they would be able to prevail in the next couple of weeks. So you're not going to have a peace deal which requires painful concessions on both sides, when both sides think that they are on the cusp of victory.
I think that, once again, it seems like it's been going on for eternity, especially to us, but look at the history of warfare. This has only been less than a month. It has not been even a full 4 weeks. That's not a long time in the history of a military campaign. And especially whenever we have two relatively irreconcilable positions, which is that the Russians have now put and need to save face in terms of declaring some sort of victory, or they need to fight it out as a stalemate. You see this all the time in the history of offensive warfare, which is that you have somebody who is a leader like Putin, who gambles that he can get this done very quickly, doesn't have to bring 100% of his military power to bear. Then you have this smaller state which puts up a heroic resistance. This actually has two downsides. Number one, which is that it shows the bigger power that they have two options: save face and negotiate, or fight to the death and throw everything that you have in there. And then on the other side, it actually gives, I wouldn't say a false hope necessarily, because I'm not diminishing what they've done, but it gives them a false sense of, oh, we could actually win and we could fight this thing. And then what ends up happening is you have the solidification of the two positions. And now we have a situation where here's how it almost always ends in history, which is that, yeah, we'll try to negotiate. Both sides say they can't negotiate a position. We're going to have a very, very bloody, quote unquote, stalemate, the use of offensive weapons by the Russians in order to break that stalemate, as we saw all throughout the First World War, the Civil War, and World War II, which leads to a tremendous loss of life. Then with the Ukrainians, you have a solidification of that civilian population who doesn't want to negotiate. And it takes, I hate to say this, about 4 to 5 years and hundreds of thousands of deaths before those people are really ready in order to be once again either subjugated or negotiate some sort of position. I just think I don't see a way out of that, given the history of European conflict, given the Russian history in the way that they fight. And we shouldn't forget, the Ukrainian people themselves put up heroic resistance actually against the Nazis during the Red Army and, you know, fought to the last man and to the death. So you have two very proud peoples here. You have a classic situation of military history that everything tells us, look, as much as I want diplomacy and, you know, we'll cheer and work for it as hard here as possible, it's extraordinarily unlikely. And we just generally know the way this is going to go. And I don't want to sound glib in this. This is a tremendous, tremendous loss of life and suffering for so many people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And especially when there's, you know, when there is this kind of war propaganda in our media, in the Ukrainian media, convincing people that reality is different than reality actually is. Ultimately, you know, that doesn't serve the cause of coming to some sort of negotiated settlement, which is extraordinarily difficult. So, you know, any little rays of hope that we felt like maybe we were getting last week on that front, I wouldn't be hopeful about. I just think the two sides are too far apart, both convinced of their own imminent victory, and so unlikely to be willing to give up the concessions that would be necessary here.
Hey guys, we're going to be totally upfront with you. This is the most perilous time that we have ever operated in.
It is so difficult just to try to sort through the news, but even more importantly, to bring you accurate information as this wave of lockdown and censorship spreads across the nation.
Yeah, look, if you can become a premium subscriber today at breakingpoints.com, you're going to help us build out a vibrant, independent media ecosystem, which is free of mainstream pressure. We can't tell you how important that is at a time like this.
Yep, that's right. Go to breakingpoints.com to subscribe. We love you guys, and we appreciate you so much.